Welcome to the show, it's time to unwind. With Dave B and Dave D, the best brews you'll find. Craft beer talk, it's a passion we share. From hops to malts, we're taking you there. This is Daftaboutcraft, where the good times flow. Sit back and relax, let the flavors glow. Brews, news, and views, we've got it all right. Cheers to craft beer, let's raise it tonight.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Welcome along, we're back, hot on the heels of our bonus episode with Cold Frame just a few days ago. We present to you episode 72 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast, with me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, I hope you enjoyed our bonus. We've got loads more content coming up for you on this latest episode, including our main interview, which this time is with Mysterious Brewing, Dave.
Yeah, another birthday celebration. Mysterious featured on this podcast not long after they got going as a brew to me for myself. And fast forward to the weekend that we're just finishing off, the May Day bank holiday, and Mysterious have turned 2. So we spoke to Adam and Ken, both brewers, which is interesting in its own right, and both running the business and doing a really fine job of it. It was a really interesting interview. We got to sample some of their birthday beers.
It was almost like we were sat around a table in a pub just having a chat about their first 2 years. It was really nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, really easy to talk to and a very good example of how you can grow organically and slowly and still get to a really good position.
So that's our interview this time with Mysterious. We've also got Hype or Tripe, and this is one I would be looking forward to it, but I've cheated, and we'll tell you about that later. But Dave is looking forward to it.
I am. It's a returning Hype or Tripe, and it's probably weighted already towards Hype because I've heard from Dave that they're very, very good again this year. They were very good when they came on before, and it is Turning Point, and they're excellent custard beers. Fair play to Turning Point. They've changed it up this year. They've released their 3 custard beers. You've got your standard custard pale, vanilla custard, rhubarb and custard, which is new, and then the beer that I will be testing, and Dave has already tested, the Caribbean Matter Custard, a collaboration with Siren, where they've got hold of some Caribbean chocolate cake just to make it even more interesting.
Hold on to your hat, Dave, is all I can say, and we'll talk more about that later. We've also got Tried and Tested, our favourite beer since we last spoke to you, and we'll kick off, as we always do, with Brew to Me, where we try a beer from a brewery we haven't had before. Dave, where are you off to this time?
I'm heading to Bridlington with a heavy dose of Stuttgart, as you'll find out, and I feel quite bad about this one because it feels like a beer that really you should have, not me. Now, I'm talking about Belschnickel, who, as we'll find out from Kevin, who is the brewer and runs it with his wife, it's a German brewery in a sense, but it's not because they've embraced a lot of different styles. But you've spoken recently, Dave, or the last few months about how you've been getting into your more of your experimental fermentation beers and you're almost heading towards lambics. And they sent me a fruit lambic and it's in a big bottle. Oh my goodness, I didn't even realise this. So I've taken the top off. So I've got to uncork it.
It's been a long time since I've had a cork in a bottle of beer. If only you could see this. Dave is whirring away with his corkscrew in his kitchen.
I'm having cork issues. It's snapped slightly.
Oh.
It hasn't gone in yet, but I've got a bit and I need to work out how to try and scoop it out without letting it fall into the bottle.
Can you imagine Kevin from Belschnickel will be listening to this thinking, who are these amateurs?
Oh, crisis averted there. So it was a very big cork and just at the end, I'm not blaming the beer or anything like that. Just at the end, it sheared. Luckily, I managed to fish it out without it falling into the beer and therefore ruining it. Okay, right. Let's see what we got here.
What does that smell like then? You were just sniffing the cork there. Is it much?
So the cork smells very acidic. It smells very, as I would expect it to. It's out, nice and hazy. Apple, I would say, apple juice colour.
Yeah.
So I get quite a citrusy style nose with an acidic end to it, but not acidic as in like, oh, God, it's going to tear my throat out. Like acidic as in mixed tanniny acidic and like a bit of a wine style quality. It's not that powerful. It's not that potent a nose, which is I suppose would make sense with the ABV we're talking. It's not one of those sort of mixed firm saisons where they're 7-8%. They really start to get heavy. I'm just trying to work out how to put it into words because I'm not hugely au fait with lambic style beers. It's something that I sort of feel will eventually happen, and I'll get into them more and more. And I can see why you're sort of already getting into them. I really like this. I'm pretty confident you'd love it. So I get slightly leather. It's a bit earthy, but not too much. It's really rounded on the back end, like nothing lingers. I suspect the more I drink, the more it's going to change.
Quite light as well, is it, to drink?
Spritzy would be a good word. Light and spritzy. Red currants went in this one, and I want to say gooseberries, I think. And if they did, that makes sense because I'm getting that kind of tart berry taste.
Yeah, well, it sounds...
I really, really like it. I really like it. It's a very impressive beer. I'm pretty confident you would absolutely love it. And I think we should probably hear from Kevin now because I've spoken about him a few times and he actually gives one of the most detailed and informative voice notes I think we've ever had.
Belschnickel Brewery is a nano brewery run by myself, Kevin, and my wife, Rachel. We are currently based in Bridlington, East Yorkshire, a place perhaps many people have visited for a beach holiday at some point in their life. Rachel was born here in Bridlington and I am originally from Stuttgart in Germany. We both had previous lives before opening the brewery, myself in the German Air Force for 10 years and then working in film in Berlin, and my wife Rachel working as a biological anthropologist studying lemurs in Madagascar. How it all started with brewing, so we bought an old brewing recipe book whilst living together in Berlin and started home brewing together as a hobby. Following a change in a close family member's situation just before the pandemic, we made the move from Berlin to the UK right before Brexit, which I'm very happy about. After intensively home brewing through the COVID pandemic, we made the choice to pivot and make a go of brewing commercially on a small scale from an outbuilding in our garden to see how it would go, and I think it went quite well. Our brewery name Belschnickel may be recognizable to fans of the US Office as the Christmas character played by Dwight Schrute, whom my wife loves and just happens to be one of the so-called German bad Santas from the southwest of Germany, where I am from. Despite using German names for our beers, we brew a range of beer styles from multiple countries. When designing the recipes for our beers, we try to stick as close to the traditional recipe as possible, as we believe it is important to respect the cultural and historical background of these beers, to let the malt, hops and yeast do the talking. We opened our brewery in the summer of 2022 in Hull, East Yorkshire, with a 50-litre brew kit and one single 150-litre uni tank, concentrating on supplying local bars and bottle shops. We brew, package and label all our produce ourselves. Our beers are packaged mainly into keg and can, although we also have a small releases of 750 milliliter bottle projects. All of our artwork, branding and labeling is created in collaboration with a local graphic designer, Joseph Cox, who makes all our niche beer names and artwork ideas come to life. We also carry out collaboration beers with local businesses and would be really happy to do more of these in the future. We brew a range of beer styles from an ordinary bitter to a fest beer or imperial stout. Our core range consists of 4 beers. Our first ever beer we brewed, a traditional Gose, Pfaffendorf at 4.1%, which is named after my great-grandfather, who served as the mayor of Goslar, from where Gose originated. We were very proud to win a National SIBA Gold Award for this beer in 2023. That was really unexpected. The other beers in our core range are Hollywood, Session IPA at 3.9%, in which the dry hop addition changed with every batch. Erntehelfer, table saison at 4.9%, featuring a grain bill of barley, rye, spelt, and wheat. And finally, Schwarzer Kater, an Irish extra stout at 6.8%, which features a complex range of dark malts, giving fantastic coffee and chocolate notes. In addition to kegs and cans, we have a couple of annual bottle projects, which we have limited releases of around 100 bottles per beer. These are all beers designed for cellaring and later for vertical tasting across the years. Our Avenues collection, named after the area of Hull in which we started the brewery, with the label artwork featuring architecture from across the area. It consists of 5 beers, Saison, an Imperial Stout, a Wee Heavy, a Belgian Pale Ale, and a Belgian Dark Strong Ale. We also have a mixed fermentation project for which we currently have just one beer, Wunschpunsch, which is a Fruit Lambic style ale, which is the beer to be tasted today. But we hope to expand this collection and we are able to get brewing again. We believe one of our advantages as a small brewery is we have the opportunity to experiment and to fine-tune our recipes, which enables us to brew a range of different beer styles. We have also an exciting update for the brewery in 2025. So later this year, we will be moving our brewery into the Bridlington railway station buffet bar, which is 100 years old this year and is one of a few railway buffet bars remaining in the UK. This will also become our brewery tap room, in which we will also be serving a changing menu of regional German and Austrian dishes and bakery items prepared and cooked in-house. We will also have the opportunity to upscale the brewery in the process by quadrupling our capacity, although we will still be a nano brewery and produce beer largely for the supply of the buffet bar, as well as a few local customers. Whilst the building requires a lot of renovation, we are very excited to have a space to curate a whole experience for our customers around our beers, and also to be custodians of such a locally important building. The beer you try today, Wunschpunsch, as we are on a break from brewing currently, as we wait to begin to work on the station buffet, we currently only have our bottled beers for cellaring available. This beer is named after a German children's book by author Michael Ende, who also wrote The Neverending Story. The fruit additions to this beer will change annually, with this version of the Wunschpunsch featuring locally grown purple gooseberries and red currants. The recipe for this beer follows that of a traditional lambic beer, featuring Pilsner malt and unmalted wheat, with the addition of aged hops in the boil. For primary fermentation, we added a mixture of Belgian ale yeast, Brettanomyces, Pediococcus, and Lactobacillus. Then the beer was fermented for 12 months, after which the fruit was added, and the beer sits for another 3 months until we bottle it. We do not pasteurize our beers, so some of the fruit sugars will have contributed to the fermentation. Given the variation of microbes used in the fermentation of this beer, the flavor profile can vary quite significantly depending on when it is tasted, as it will go through cycles when the flavors of one will be more prominent than the other. For example, in terms of expectations, you may experience flavors and aromas of barnyard or leather or even sherbet or pineapple. So opening and tasting this beer is always a bit of an adventure. If anyone wishes to find out further information about us, you can visit our website or follow us on Instagram. We are hoping to be able to give more updates in the months ahead and share our renovation of the station buffet bar with everyone. Enjoy the beer and thanks for having us.
Well, thank you very much to Kevin there. Like Dave said before, that is an extraordinarily in-depth voice note that is so much more than a voice note. Obviously doing great things there with the German influences. And I've been to Bridlington, and I always thought it was a bit of a craft beer
desert. Well, it's not going to be for much longer, is it? And it's going to be at the railway station, Dave. Like, it couldn't get any better for you. You could go buy this from the buffet bar. This is dream holiday style stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. A return visit to the area has got to be on the cards at some point, I think, especially if those beers are going to be available in there, which I guess they are.
Yeah, and I mean, that beer makes me want to go to Bridlington and go do that as well, because it just seems like it'd be an ace way to spend a day. The home-cooked food that's Austrian and German, like, sign me up. I can't wait for when they're canning as well, and hopefully I'll be able to get hold of some other stuff, and I definitely want to try more of the big bottles. This is about as a resounding a hit as I think I can give.
Absolutely.
No, I'm super impressed with that.
Right, well, I usually go to the seaside in this feature, but not this time. Inland, between Bicester and Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire, to Booby Trap Brewery. Now, Booby Trap have been going for about 4 years, I think, and I bumped into the guys at Beer X in Liverpool, and I sort of accosted them in a very friendly way. I reminded them that I'd messaged them about taking part in Brew to Me, and they hadn't got back to me, for which they were very apologetic. I even managed to get a can off them there and then, an unlabelled can which they were carrying around with them. They've since sent me a lovely package of beers, some of which I've sent down to you, Dave, so you've got them as well. They've got 10 different beers on their website, so really, really good selection. The weather's been warm, so I'm going to just have a lovely, nice session IPA, 4.5%, which is called Hazy Rays. And they do all sorts. They've got East Coast beers, West Coast, they've got a milk stout in there, but hazy pale for me. The sun is shining outside. This is what I want.
I actually did have one of those. I didn't have that beer, which is a shame because we could have compared, but I have had a Booby Trap, and they would have been a brew to me as well for me. So I have some impressions on them as well.
Well, Eldorado Mosaic, so we're talking tropical fruit, a little bit of bitterness and at the back end. Yeah, that would match up to how it tastes. Very light, as you would want, really, from a 4.5% pale. A real sit-in-the-sun sort of beer. A little bit of pine in there, I think. I guess that's the Mosaic, and very drinkable.
The weather is lovely, and we're actually recording in the afternoon for a change, which is always a little bit more enjoyable, because it essentially feels a bit naughty that we get to drink beer and talk about it in the afternoon rather than the evenings. But, well, it sounds like you've enjoyed yours, and it's absolutely that kind of weather. I had the New England. I didn't mind it. I would say I've had fruitier New Englands, but it didn't put me off wanting to try what else you sent me, put it that way. I'm still looking forward to trying the other beers. If I didn't have this massive 750 bottle to go through, I'd probably, look to go find a session beer, but I also have that and a school run to do, so I can't be going through this 750 beer.
You're going to have to save the rest of it until later. I see that you've got a German wit beer, they've got a small IPA, 1.8%, so there's all sorts in their repertoire, which is lovely to see. They've got a tap room, they've got plenty going on, and let's listen to Philip now from Booby Trap to tell us all about the brewery.
Hello, this is Philip from Booby Trap Brewery. How did the brewery start? Well, as a lot of people, started off as a home brewer. And the story was quite intriguing because I've been a chef for 40 years. And at the time, in 2015, alongside working with another 7 or 8 chefs in my catering company, a Polish kitchen porter that we had asked the question on a Friday afternoon when we opened a case of beers, why don't we start brewing our own? And I replied to Andrea saying, we don't have time for that, I'm afraid. So he took it upon himself the following week to bring in a plastic bucket, 2 tins of extract, I think from Wilco's, a bag of yeast and a bag of sugar. And off he went, tap water in the bucket, warmed up the extract, in we go. I asked him what the ABV was, he said 5%, but he said I'm going to chuck a bag of sugar as well. I thought typical Polish. So 3 weeks later, Andreas has dealt with this beer, and the chefs have stood there on a Friday afternoon, and I'm thinking, crikey, look at that, we've got 38 pints of free beer here. Tried the beer, and I said to Andreas, that is absolutely awful, and surely we can do something better than that. So in 2015, myself and some of the chefs set about trying to make some decent beer. So moving forward, Booby Trap, well, it was a pipeline dream, to be honest, and it wasn't until March 23rd, 2020, when we went into lockdown, that all of a sudden I realised that we'd lost the catering company. I lost all the chefs, sped up with a partner who was part of the business I was living with, moved house, and decided to start a microbrewery. So I brought in a guy called Nick Law from Hop Forward Beers as a consultant because, taking the jump, and I was literally on my own, from homebrewing to commercial, I felt I needed some support, which Nick still supports me to this day. And so Booby Trap eventually launched in December 2021 on a 4-barrel kit. Yeah, so when we launched the brewery, we realised that the county we were in the area we're in, had a niche for craft beer and food pairing as well. So, we looked at pairing food with beer. We set up a tap room. That's now expanded to 75 seats. And we're open, the tap room's open at the weekends, Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays, with all sorts of various things going on, including live bands, cheese and food pairings, brewery tours. If you need any more info, visit the website, boobytrapbrewery.com. Cheers.
Well, thanks very much, Philip. That's really interesting there, hearing about the cheese and beer tastings, because obviously that's something that we do here on the podcast once or twice a year. So that's tremendous. Another tap room for the list to get down there and try more of those beers with the food as well. Looking forward to that. But yeah, that has gone down really well, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into some of the other beers you were kind enough to send. So if you haven't tried anything from Booby Trap, get yourself onto the website and get yourself some of their wonderful beers.
This is Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. Daftaboutcraft, you're tuned into your favorite beer podcast.
Regular listeners to Daftaboutcraft might recall that one of the breweries we've featured on our Brew to Me section in the past was Mysterious Brewing. Well, a little further down the line in their journey now, they're about to celebrate their 2nd birthday. So joining us now from Mysterious are Ken and Adam. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having us again.
It's nice of you to join us. And we've got birthday beers to drink, and we want to find out what's been going on with you in your first 2 years, really.
It's been a massive adventure, hasn't it?
Yeah, very busy 2 years. It feels like about 8 years to us. A lot happens in a short time. Yeah, it's always just a series of problem solving, going to events, and beers. Yeah, whirlwind. I think we're different people from sort of 2 years ago almost, aren't we? The amount we've learned and things we've done. It's been hectic. So that's why we can't wait for the actual birthday, because that's the event where we have all our beers, but we don't actually work it.
We have a day off.
Work the room is how we work it.
And those sort of days are few and far between, as you will have found out, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's been brilliant. As Ken says, the last 2 years have been an absolute whirlwind, and it's been a fantastic journey so far. Really looking forward to the next 2 years and beyond.
So going back 2 years then, how did the journey actually begin for yourselves? How did it all come together?
The quick summary was really down to a homebrew competition, wasn't it, Ken?
Yeah, that's right.
It's at a beer festival, and I helped put that festival together and involved an amateur brewing club that both Ken and I are members of to create the festival beer. And then over to you, Ken, to what happened next.
Yeah, the winning beer was, the competition win was to produce the beer with Elusive to be served at that beer festival. And so me and Adam sort of met at Reading Amateur Brewers anyway, and Burfield, sort of Burfest, where it was served, was just outside of Reading. Yeah, so we went there to drink copious amounts of it. And whilst there, we met Andy Watts from Little London Brewery, and he loves to talk beer, and he was saying to us, well, if you want to come down and do like a big batch again, then come down to my place. I'm only down the road in Silchester. Lit a flame really for us. So we thought, well, we'll come down and have a look. I mean, we're going to do a bigger batch. I don't know what we're going to do with maybe 600 or 1,000 litres of beer, but let's go down there anyway. And had a look around, and he's been massive to us. Basically, we wouldn't exist if it wasn't for him. And he pretty much said, whatever you want to do, make some beer. And we kind of conjured a plan there and then, and sort of at the end of kind of like to cuckoo brew from where he was, and we got a few test brews and played around with it and sort of thought it's going to be all or nothing. So we got our own, because he's cask only. He serves a lot of sort of traditional beers to local pubs, and we thought, no, we're going to need to get proper DPVs so we can carbonate in tank. Started playing around with canning ideas, just sort of went all in. We kind of snowballed from that moment to basically the setup we've grown on that today. Just started. So at the Nag's Head was our first birthday, where we're having, it was our launch rather, our first birthday and now our second birthday. And so we got 4 or 5 beers together for our launch. So we kind of started in almost January. It was almost January the 1st, wasn't it?
May bank holiday, yeah. We had 4 beers, and they went down really well. A real diverse range of beers as well, wasn't it?
I think when we first tried your beers, were they some of the first beers you made, I think, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I think they've been fairly early on, because if I'm correct, it would have been autumn 2023, wasn't it?
Yeah, it feels like it might have even been late summer, not even quite autumn. So it would have only been maybe 2-3 months in tops, I reckon.
Yeah, so certainly within our sort of first 8-9 brews, I would say, or releases.
And in our naivety, we thought, well, we're going to make 4 beers. Everyone's just going to be falling over themselves to sort of break our doors down and get them, and then we were just going to be rolling forward. And that was a big introduction into like, oh, we need to get out here and sell, and that's it.
So how was that then? You sort of started full of these expectations, and were they dashed fairly early, and it was much more difficult than you expected it to be?
Well, it's hard to actually remember what we thought then, if that sort of makes sense, because I remember parts of it, because as you learn things as you go along, it just becomes sort of gospel, doesn't it? I mean, there must have been some naivety, as there would have been to anyone, but we had quite a lot of contacts in the beer world anyway, with some being through the homebrew club. We knew owners of other breweries, owners of pubs around the Reading area. So we kind of knew a little bit, but obviously there's stuff we could never have known.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we went in with quite a diverse launch range, didn't we? So if I remember correctly, we had a red, had a pale, we had a best bitter.
Yeah, I remember the best.
And did we have a black IPA?
No, we didn't.
I think
No, the regular IPA, wasn't it? Yeah. So I think a few people were quite surprised that we launched with a red, but I think that sort of set the seed in that from the out, we wanted to try and have a good range of different beers and different styles. And it also enabled us, because if we roll back a little bit earlier, the opportunity that we have had with Little London Brewery to do essentially a soft launch of a brewery, we didn't have to put our homes on the line. We didn't take out second mortgages. We didn't invest a huge amount of money to set up the brewery from scratch. So we've had an opportunity over the last 2 years to go softly to take those baby steps to grow organically. But it's enabled us to maybe be a little bit more adventurous. You speak to people that are launching or recently launched in the same sort of timescale to us, and they, as we are as well, the 4 to 4.5% hoppy pale ale, hazies, those are the beers that sell. But we've been able to brew quite a diverse range of different beers because we haven't had the financial pressure that other people might have to just be able to have to peak sales constantly. But that's been good for us, isn't it, Ken? We've been able to diversify, and I suppose that's led us on to the black IPAs that we've done quite a few of those, and they're a rare beer to see.
Yeah, we kind of have a philosophy in some beers, like the red. We think that's a no-brainer, in that if you go into a pub, a craft beer person goes into a pub and there's a red, you think, I'm going to have one of them. If you go in and say, I'm going to try, say, 5 beers, or you don't have to have pints, you're going to try the red because you don't see them all the time. Well, the last red we did was packed with Mosaic, and that just seemed to work really well in our minds. So we thought, well, if everyone's going in and having 1 pint, they'll get through the keg.
So do you find that sort of beer people like me and Dave, will they go for that type of beer? Or is it your more normal punter who goes for those beers?
Yeah, I mean, you can second guess no one. We can think what people are going to go for. So we do like pop-up events ourselves as well in places that aren't necessarily craft beer, where there'll be craft beer people, but there'll be more sort of the public that will go into a chain pub other than that. So we'll put on, and we think, well, them sort of things that you think a lager's going to sell really well, and sometimes it doesn't, like the pale does. So we're continually surprised, and that's kind of like the black IPA way, is that try and have a black beer on most of the time, and we love black IPA. And the amount of times we've been out and sort of people will come up, and the thing they always say, isn't it? Is it like a Guinness? And so, yeah, which it isn't. And
yeah, it's the same colour, yeah.
It sells really well. So we've kind of rolled, there's things we think we would do that we wouldn't sell as well, but for some reason the black IPA does, and we just keep making them, and people love them.
This seems like a good idea to talk about your second birthday black IPA collab.
Yes.
Yeah, Noir. Yes, it's personally I think it's the best one we've done, and I know that's a real sales line that you should do. They vary enough, each one we've done, and we can warrant what their differences are. But this one went for West Coast leaning, all that pine, which you'd get from, so a Cascadian black is what it traditionally is, and the Cascade hop is actually a traditional sort of West Coast hop, but we used the West Coast hops apart from that, and we think it just really delivers that sort of punch. And when you've got that sort of the black base, even like stouts, they can carry a lot more other flavours going through, but with the black IPA you get, I think, a lot of a cleaner black base, if that makes sense.
I certainly get the West Coastness out of it. It's a real, to me, it's a West Coast black IPA, which by the sounds of it is exactly what you wanted to do. And it's an interesting collab because your partners in it, I wouldn't necessarily associate with doing that kind of beer. And that's Disruption is. I think of them and I just think hazy pales. So was that a bit of a departure for them to do it as well?
Yeah, they said they've done one before. I've not seen one they've done because they've obviously had a little bit of a change around there with head brewer and what have you. And sort of we know the guys quite well there. And this was sort of part of their Spring Loaded festival they had recently. And they put on some really big hazies and some really interesting sours. They sort of, they sort of like, well, we want to do a black IPA, and they know that we sort of have done a lot. We've got a lot of sort of miles under the belt of that. So they came over to us, and it was a no-brainer, really. Good fun brew day with them as well.
When it comes to choosing beers, obviously you've talked a little bit about your black IPAs, which you enjoy. Do you mainly brew beers that you want to drink, or have you learned in 2 years that isn't always what sells? You've got to cater for your audience as well?
Obviously, the audience is key. We're a commercial operation, so we have to do beers that sell, but we have to do beers that we want to enjoy. So just because you're doing a 4.5% pale, which is probably the most popular style that's out there at the moment, we enjoy our beers, don't we, Ken? We don't do something that we're not going to enjoy to drink ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely say like the difference from now and 2 years ago, where we would have thought, well, we're going to do some crazy beers, and I can't wait to let loose. Is we know no restrictions, but if we're going to sell what's in tank and pay the rent, then like I say, the 4 to 4.5% pales. I mean, every brewery's got them. Even so, we did a collab with Henry at Sunken Nave, and he said he was at Burning Sky and he was having a look around his cool ship, and he said, don't be fooled by that. That's great, but the pales pay the bills. So even a brewery like that, you kind of think, okay, it's not just not a problem. So, but then that's interesting as well, because you're not putting a corner, but then you think, okay, we're going to do a pale, and then it's like, well, let's do something other people aren't doing. Let's make it slightly different. Let's try and that you sort of find your creativity in that restriction. So then we're looking at sort of hops you don't always see. So like last year we did a cashmere beer, so it's like we're going to call this year the year of cashmere, because we've noticed a few people since then of like, oh yeah, cashmere.
It does seem everywhere.
It's funny,
a bit
isn't it?
more now.
We did Cashmere Cadet probably last summer, wasn't it? I think something like that. And since we've suddenly just started spotting it now. It's either we're noticing it, or we obviously set the world alight with Cashmere.
Head of the game.
Influencer. And all that came from listening to a podcast with someone at Barthaus, and as Joe, and she said, oh yeah, and she's very well educated on the hops, obviously she works at Barthaus, and she just mentioned it, saying, oh yeah, I think that's my favourite hop. And I'm thinking, I can't actually say that I've ever had it, and it is a hop that's in danger of going out of production, because they work on obviously the most popular ones, they grow the most, and there's such a rush. So if they found a new hop tomorrow, you wouldn't be able to get it commercially for, I think it's about 4 or 5 years or so. There's a real slow uptake because they're not going to plant lots of it. But of course, when it gets bigger, big breweries contract it so they don't run out. So they'll go in and say, I'm going to take, kilos, half a ton of it. Because then they're committed, you'll find a lot of the beers, they'll have to use it essentially, which when Sabro came around, then there's a lot. But you see a little bit less Sabro now.
It's calmed down a bit now, isn't it?
Yeah. Which is still really good when used well, but it's certainly sort of peaked. And then you'll find another one, because they'll all have like acronyms and numbers on them, and then they'll get a name.
It's Superdelic's one in more recent times that a few breweries had it to start with, then more and more breweries have started using it.
Crush as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we had that as a sample, must be over a year ago now.
But we were homebrewing, so it's longer than that.
Yeah, 2 years ago. And we were like, we really need to do a beer with this. And we have just done a couple, haven't we?
Well, we've just done Crush and Superdelic.
When you were homebrewing, was it always the intention to start a commercial brewery, or did you just kind of fall into that?
We're both very different on that. Adam's was, which I'll let him tell his part of the story, and mine was no. People would always say, oh, you seem to be really into it, are you going to do it as a job? I was like, no, I'm not going to. Like, it looks like a lot of hassle. No, I'm not going to do it. No, fine. And then I'm big on sort of vibes and circumstance, and like I say, I was telling her how it started. We just rolled into that really, and I was just like, well, it's leading that way, and we've worked hard to get where we are, but it's like, yeah, so I don't really look that far to the future. As long as I'm sort of pay the bills and have fun on the way, then yeah, when it's that. But Adams is a very different story.
Yeah, maybe a slightly different take. Both Ken and I have been home brewing for quite a long time, and I always sort of felt that it was something that I would like to like to try, and I'd like to do with somebody else as a opportunity to try and have something outside of my day job. For one reason or another, that original plan, well, COVID killed off that original plan to scale up to commercial, and obviously that would have been a very different operation to how we've started now. So that would have been
an all-in job,
a very large investment all in. So it's always been mulling around, but it did mean that when Andy came to us with this opportunity to go and cuckoo brew, we already had some figures. We already had and Ken and I got talking. There was already a business plan that admittedly was for a different launch format, but it was adaptable, and we could develop that into what we've done now, into this soft launch, which in hindsight has been absolutely the best way about going around what we've done. It's given that opportunity for us to learn, to develop our skills, to grow the business, rather than literally opening the doors on day one and having to be brewing maximum capacity to cover those costs.
Yeah, you've had that pressure lifted, haven't you, that a lot of breweries find in their first year, 2 years.
And I think, obviously, you've got to look at what's happened to a lot of breweries over the last couple of years, the debts that breweries have had over COVID, the pain that has gone through the hospitality industry in the last sort of 2 years, 18 months. There's a lot of people struggling out there. Again, just the other week, a brewery not too far from us that has been around for a long time, well established, has sadly closed. It's not an easy industry to be in, but the way that we've gone about building the foundations of the business, being able to grow our customer base organically, to be able to get a reasonable size following over the last 2 years, I think has just put us in a much stronger position than if we had been gun-ho from day one.
While you're sort of talking there about the business side of things, you did touch on it. You're actually both brewers, which is quite interesting, because we don't normally, when we do interviews, there's sort of, we might talk to the brewer, but there'll be someone behind the scenes running the business side, or vice versa. But is it a 50-50 division of labour, or how is it essentially having two brewers trying to run one brewery?
We both do everything. Who's closest to it? Who's around? Every now and again, we're both around and do it. Just two heads to sort of win together, lose together, I think is our kind of philosophy, really. We are Mysterious Brew, and
You don't sort of knock heads or clash over anything. You want to, Ken, you want to do one thing, Adam, you want to do something else, or you find some, or look, the smile says maybe that does happen sometimes.
You'd love it to be a fly on the wall at our place. We don't clash heads, but we'll have discussions that they're not meaningless, but we had a 40-minute, it was about half an hour conversation about whether German lager should be sweet or dry. And at the end of it, we're like, it doesn't really matter, does it? Like, you prefer one or I prefer the other. Like, we can overthink things. So we always approach it and sort of, if the other one doesn't agree with it, we talk it through, the reasons. And so I say, we haven't really got egos. And
it works well, doesn't it? Because I think we both level each other as well a little bit. We both sometimes will be differing opinions, but we come together and work out a path that feels right for the brewery. And it enables us, I think, to actually be a little bit more educated in some of those decisions. If we were both, no, this is the only way to do it, and we both agreed on that route, we would be sort of charging down in a single direction and maybe not taking that time to stop and think and the what ifs. And that's really important in a business, especially when our time is limited still at the moment, when we're both not in the brewing full time. So we need to be able to decide on our path, but we need to do it with a little bit of an educated guess at times. And it's really good to also be with, Ken, or I'm sure will agree, with both our worst critics. But that's good that you can analyse what you're doing. Yes, maybe we over-analyse a little bit too much sometimes, but I think it's important to be able to have that conversation. And if we think that something's not quite going in the right direction, we can stop and have a think about it and take that breath in that moment to appraise what we're doing. Sometimes we change direction a little bit. Sometimes we go, actually, no, this is the correct route, and we can carry on going. But it's really important to have that 50-50 share in the business. We have that veto, don't we? You know, if one of us doesn't agree with something, we can call the veto card. And yeah, and I think generally speaking, we end up with a stronger product at the end of the day, a stronger brand and a stronger business.
Yeah, I mean, I've been proved wrong on things. I'm saying I don't think this is going to work, and it does, and humble pie,
Vice
isn't
versa.
it? You know, it's just sometimes we're both right, but we're thinking A and B. You know, thinking different things, and again, it's just overthinking. If people go, "Oh, you two are really chilled," you know, blah blah, and you're like, "Yeah, we are," but and some of the conversations we have are actually pointless about the tiny little bit of a can label. Oh, I don't know. I mean, if it goes over there a little bit, like someone can't see it in a box, and you're like, no one's got it in the box, and but then you know, is that a bad
It just
thing?
shows you care, though, doesn't it? Like, that's the thing.
Feels good that we can actually take that time and think about the small things. It means that we've probably sussed the big ones, and you know, in business, the fine detail can be that last 20% into getting the business to where you want it to be. But it takes the most amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, we went really round the houses with. So the name came up in minutes, not even half an hour, I'd say. The logo, 3 months, and the can design, 2 months.
Same.
The logo took longer than anything we've ever done. So we did it, and we love it, and we're really proud. And now, though, people come up and go, is it a map of the world? And you're like, oh, no, yeah. We as happy as we were with it, we didn't test it on the nation. But it's mysterious, so, you know, who's wrong?
You've just made me look at it. I know your logo, but now I'm thinking, I need to look at it. What have I missed? What have I missed?
Well, it's a mystery, isn't it?
Yeah, what do you see?
Yeah.
So we go.
I can see why people say map of the world.
Yeah.
I see a person who looks a bit like a Cluedo character that hasn't got a face.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just the Invisible Man.
Well, okay, yeah, there you are.
And we thought it was really obvious. But if you can't see the Invisible Man, is that our problem? You know?
I think I'd have been there all night. Well played, Dave. I never would have got that.
Ah, do you see? There you go. I mean, just as well we're called Mysterious. It would get us out of a few holes, wouldn't it?
You see these brands on shelves in bottle shops and on websites, but how often do you actually stop and look at a logo? I'm just thinking in my head now of other logos.
But yeah, things that like when you see it, you can't unsee it, like the arrow in FedEx and things like that. Like, yeah, so we took so long on that, and we're happy. Where people do or don't get it, we're still happy with it, you know. So
in terms of where the brewery is now, when you started out 2 years ago, you were Cuckoo Brewing. What's the state of play now?
Big changes. Really.
Big change.
You know, we've been through the whole phase of Cuckoo Brewing. We've got to a stage now where we're now taking on the full brewing license. So we're doing a little bit of a role reversal with Andy Watts. Last year we did a collab to celebrate his 70th birthday. So he sort of announced to us that he wanted to take a little bit more of a back step in the day-to-day running of the brewery as a building, and suggested to us that we looked at taking it over. So we struck a deal, and we're in the process of doing that at the moment, working our way through that phased process to take on the brewery fully ourselves. And happy days. What was it? Probably about a month ago, we got our brewing license number through, so we are now officially a brewery. We can enter SEBA competitions.
Rather than the general public telling us what they think, you have the professionals tell us.
You get people like me judging your beers at BRX, yeah, great.
I was going to say, does that therefore spell the end of your freelancing? Will this then be, this is it now, we've got to commit to full-time in the brewery every day, or...?
Not quite yet. No, it's like a production jump, really. We can only make so much with the tanks we have. So the next step, that would be our next step. Yeah, would definitely be... it's an all or nothing, isn't it? You go in, you're paying 2 people, but we've kind of grown organically, like Adam said. So we'll be brewing we'll be brewing from a batch, and if 50% of that's already sold, it's brilliant. So that's how we're trying to build our customer base as we go. And obviously, you then got the pitfalls of what's going on in the world, and it is a luxury item because you can get cheap beer, but good beer is obviously more expensive. Yeah, so we're sort of building it all at the same time. We've got some really great customers and some distributors on board with us now. And the best thing is that we want is for people to say, well, we want more and we can't produce it. And then it's a no-brainer. We're going to double our tank space. And then the decision's made for us. Yeah, it's certainly around the corner.
Are you feeling a new sense of pressure now because of that? Or are you still chilled and happy with everything, the pace it's going?
I'm not sure. Pressure...
I feel as though Ken never feels pressure with anything.
Yeah, I could get my wife in here if you like, because everyone goes, "Oh, Ken's so chilled." She just looks at me going, "They're idiots." Not so much pressure. I mean, it's probably even more exciting in a way. Because it's getting out to more people. Like, so the distributor we got recently, and a lot of our coast has been in Brighton on the south coast, and you've got sort of people checking in pubs that, let's just think, sort of pinch yourself, like amazing, like the Evening Star in Brighton, and you're like, wow, I've been in here and saw some really good brewers in there, you know. So then it's a brewer's pub, and to have your beer served in there and people enjoying it, it's like, yeah, ridiculous and really good. Pressure and excitement taken out of it would be if we were going to be making beers that we don't particularly want to make. You know, if someone said, oh, you can do the next step, but we want 3,000 litres of a lager that doesn't taste of anything, then it would be, I might as well be a machine operator. You know, we still love that creative thing and we want to do it our way. Like we've been offered investment from people, but we're both kind of control freaks, so we want to be doing it our way. You know, we know we've got to go within the market demands, obviously, to sell the beer, but it's going to be us. And yeah, we like it to be bits of us. And I think that's what people have said to us is they say, do more social media because we're always busy doing other things. And like, oh, the best ones when it's you two. And be like, yeah, but we're always like cleaning stainless steel or going out selling and things. So yeah, so I like to think, I mean, we present it as we do, but we like to think what you see is us. We can't do it any other way. That makes sense. The beers and how we come across, really.
So what percentage of your beers is going out in cans as opposed to keg and cask?
Tend to try and do most of our beers on all three formats, can, keg and cask. It doesn't always quite work out that way, but I would say we're probably on sort of third splits. When we first launched, it's much easier to get cask into a pub than it is to get keg. And there's numerous reasons for that. So we swung initially quite heavily on cask beer, and now we are starting to swing that down and push more into keg beer. For national distribution, it's easier in keg. It has a longer lifespan. It's not to say that we're not doing cask, we're just doing a slightly different mix to how we originally set up.
Does that cask tend to stay more locally then?
Yes. Yeah, so we have, obviously, as Ken sort of alluded, picked up 2 distributors. They do take a little bit of cask. And interesting, actually, one of them takes a bit more keg than cask than I was originally expecting. But, you know, that keg is definitely picking up. And we're also on some websites, so people are able to buy direct from us through a couple of different platforms. So, and that's obviously being shipped out nationally. And when you're shipping stuff off by DHL and UPS, it needs to be keg.
So we talked about one of the birthday beers you sent us. These aren't all of them. You have done a few. The other one you sent us is a collab with a brewery stroke brewer that I wouldn't necessarily be all that familiar with. And you mentioned earlier the Sunken Knave, and it's a porter, and it's a really, really good porter. We had a really good porter on our previous episode from Sulworth up in Scotland. But what was the thinking of this beer then?
So Henry from Sunken Knave, he comes with a lot of heritage. He was Fuller's and Dark Star when sort of Asahi took over, so they sent him to Dark Star to work that, and he's got a big leaning on old ales and he really likes his historic beers. And we got into contact with him by a mutual friend. He was up for it. He's a great guy. And I can't remember, we just smashed ideas. But I think he'd sort of said, well, an oatmeal porter, and we hadn't done one. And I love a porter, but just, hadn't made one. And basically the theory was, let's get as many oats in it as we can. So we sort of back and forwards with recipes and what have you. And so we got with that one, and it was, it was a great brew day. He got the train, so we was drinking all day. He went through one of everything we've got. And he brought up a bottle of the first porter he'd ever done at Fuller's. So we got to drink that.
Wow.
While brewing as well, and it was that was a really fun brew day. Sort of held at ours. So he's working at another brewery now. I think it's just that one, isn't it? I can't remember. It's because he's down in sort of Worthing way.
Yeah, he's sort of working mostly full time there. I think, isn't he, on a contract?
Yeah, sort of contracting. Yeah, and he cuckoos out somewhere for his own beers. He doesn't do that many releases. Yeah, he does some really, really good beers.
It's always a topic of conversation, the whole collab thing. I think it's a subject that fascinates listeners as well, because, listeners will see these breweries teaming up, and I think they want to know what goes on behind the scenes on a collab day. You've obviously collabed on these birthday beers. Give us a typical day in the life of a collab.
I think it's worth mentioning the reason behind the collab as well. Not just the fun and frolics that goes on a brew day. We started with a couple of local collabs with people that we knew back in our first year, but now we're looking further afield. I've been down to Devon. Ken's been up to Northumberland. We've got a potential collab out east. It's great for small breweries of similar sizes to get our beer and our brand known in different regions. That's why, the collab thing is really popular to do. Plus, I think the whole brewing industry feels like working with your mates. It's a very different industry to certainly what I've worked in for most of my career. And a lot of the time, it doesn't feel as if you're competitors. It feels as if you're friends. And so when you come together on these collab days, you know, it is great. It's a learning experience because everybody brews slightly different. Everybody's kit is slightly different. You know, we've learned things going to other people to go, you do it like that. Oh, that's really clever. And we've had people come to us and seen how we use a hop spider in our underback and go, that is a genius idea. I'm going to steal that. And it's a great way of sharing knowledge and time with people.
That sort of feels like what it was originally meant to be. And it feels like possibly over time that's eroded a little bit. And sometimes you get a can that says it's a collab and it's just almost a brewery's name has been slapped on the side of it just to do something. But it sounds like you guys really do still embrace what a collab is and should be.
Oh, yeah, big time. I mean, we only collab with people that sort of we like the beers of. And also with that, and it's not the reason we've done it, but it's very much getting peer reviewed that, you know, really good brewers will come to us and be like, yeah, that's fine, you know, that's good. And to reassure that we are, again, with us dialing into what we do, that people are sort of, sometimes you do feel like a chancer coming from a couple of years as home brewers, but for people to come and sort of be like, hanging on what you're doing and learning is just a bit mind-blowing, really. You know, we've had some really good brewers come to us, and just to know you're on the right track.
Of all the people we speak to, every second or third brewer says they feel like a bit of a chance, a bit of a invader in the industry. They don't really belong here. Imposter syndrome. We hear those phrases all the time. You're not alone. You're really not.
Yeah.
Well, you're putting yourself out there, aren't you? You're putting your passion into the hands of the public. And it is quite a daunting thing to do at times. I can see why it's quite a common feeling.
How do you kind of respond to the dreaded Untapped when you see people checking your beers in on there? Do you just turn the other cheek? Do you not even look? Are you happy to take people's comments on board?
We've been told so many things by different people about their opinion of Untapped. I think we probably looked at it quite a lot, and we look at it a lot less now. Concept behind Untapped is brilliant. The simple fact of it Untapped is that there isn't a standardised scoring system. One person's opinion of what, I don't know, a 3 is somebody else's 4. And it's just because there is no standard way of scoring.
I was listening to somebody talking about this just recently, and they said, well, you know, if you can rate on a score of 0 to 5, an average beer must be 2.5. I mean, on the face of it, yeah, but
mathematically,
who rates like that? No one rates like that, do they?
No. And I think there's a lot of contributing factors as well. If your beers are only, let's say, in your own tap room and you give people a really great experience, generally they're going to rate your beers higher than they would be if they were, you know, down, you know, Bob's pub a Tuesday night playing dart. Don't get me wrong, you know, the feedback is always really good and it's a great way of engaging with the customer and seeing what people, and it's also actually really nice. Probably the biggest thing we get out of it is we see where our beers are, because obviously now we're just going via distributors and we don't always know where our beers end up. So we'll start getting scores coming through from pubs and venues. It's actually really interesting to see where we end up.
Yeah, that must be fascinating. You can sort of be having your dinner one night, have a look on Untapped, and you see yourself in a pub that you never knew your beer was at.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I'd sort of accept that a lot more now. But when, do you remember when we launched? It was like the 5th or 6th beer we'd done. We weren't in many places, and we launched it, and I sent one box to the local bottle shop to me, and then it came up on Untapped that someone was rating it in a bottle shop somewhere on the south coast. So, and I messaged him saying, by any chance, did somebody buy it? He's like, no, I haven't even put it out yet. I've got no idea. They didn't have a picture of it, did they? They couldn't have done. Really
to this day, we've never worked out how those beers supposedly got to a particular venue.
And they knew that we had the beer. So we don't even think we'd launched it. It was really weird. Yeah.
It was very, very
Were
strange.
they favourable?
You know what? I can't even remember now. But
yeah, indifferent.
Yeah.
Can't remember. Yeah, it's. But the frustrating thing is, though, some places do buy their beers by the ratings on that, like bottle shops and some pubs. And of course it makes sense to them.
You see it online, don't you? Like certain online places will say what the score is on Untapped as a selling point, which isn't necessarily a fair way of doing it.
At the end of the day, as long as our beers score well, the positive vibes that come back are good, that's fine with us.
Yeah, you've got to take it as a whole, haven't you? Yeah,
but, yeah, it's very easy to kind of get sucked in. We try not to.
I think you can waste a lot of time looking at Untapped and get very worked up about it. And really, one person's opinion is worth no more than the next person, is it? Nobody's right or wrong.
Well, it's subjective, isn't it? It's an art form without sounding too pretentious. Someone gave us a kick in last week on it, and I thought it was hilarious because we got a beer called 70 watts, and they just put not much electricity running through this. Fair play. I took my hat off to that.
That's quite a good one. We'll give them that.
At least they were creative.
So the first 2 years sounds like it's gone really well for you guys. You've managed to go along organically, do things at your own pace, and it feels as though you're gathering pace now. So what will the next 12 months, 2 years hold for you, do you hope?
It'd be lovely to kind of go back and think, what did we say 2 years ago to where we'd be in 2 years' time? Because it'll probably be completely different to what we say now. We've got what's written on paper that we would like to be. I think it's really important that we have a tap room, that we have our own venue. And we would have probably said the same thing 2 years ago. And we are starting to do more events as much as we can in the premises we're in now. I think it's that, for me, is probably the key thing for the business moving forward.
So, same as we know where we need to be as a business. Yeah, that next step would be a tap room as a base. And essentially, a tap room's paying your rent. So if you've got a base where you're selling direct pints, and then that takes a pressure off, and then you concentrate on the business in other ways. And people are coming, then they're looking for interesting beer, so you're probably less worried about the odd batch being out there. That's what we find from speaking to people. But that's that could take 6 weeks, 6 years to find the right place, and there's a lot of caveats to that. That's where we want to be. And we're never going to be huge. We want to make a living. Obviously, would employ some people because we can't do everything that both of us scale that we need to grow to do that, which would then be given back to the community and sort of training people and giving people work and giving people entertainment, essentially, because most good tap rooms are the best local pub, aren't they, really? Because, as you know, a lot of pubs are not great, unfortunately. Yeah. So the landlord's tied into it, the people in the village are tied into it, and people wonder why they're not going.
I think the best tap rooms I go to, and I do go to quite a few, they've become a part of the community. And I used to hate this word community, but little independent tap rooms are really, really, really key in a lot of communities now. I can think of lots off the top of my head where everybody will go, and there'll be events on there, and they'll go to, only quiz nights and that sort of stuff, but people will go and they'll enjoy their time there. They're very different to traditional pubs. It's a very different atmosphere.
Yeah, 100%.
Expect a certain thing from a pub, don't they? And unfortunately, it's not as good. Don't get me wrong, there's some great pubs out there, but that tap room, if someone bumps into you in a tap room, you both apologise to each other and walk away, don't you? Not every pub, So and that's what we'd love to do. We sort of put our influence on the beers and the business, but for us to then do it as a creative space, that's something else we've overthought about. We've had some insane ideas, and we'd never have the money to do the insane things we'd love to do in a tap room. From what was the greatest one was like we'd want it to just be a big blank wall, and there's a portaloo, and you just enter this door, and then you walk into an amazing tap room. Which is clearly...
that's somewhere I actually went once. Which is a portaloo just on a wall, and you open the door to the portaloo, and it goes into a bar.
Yeah, I've seen something similar in a laundrette where you open like a washing machine and you walk into a bar. Awesome.
But absolutely, as Ken said, it's about being part of that community. So for us, it's about finding the community that we want to base ourselves in, because we've had that sense of Cuckoo Brewing. That's why we called ourselves Mysterious, because we didn't really have a home. That thing now is for us to find the space and the community that will enable us to grow. Yeah, that's the exciting bit for our next part of the journey.
And then not knowing, really. We know where we want to go, but it's going to take us somewhere exciting.
Well, I think we know then, and if we get to May Bank Holiday Weekend 2027 and we're doing an outside broadcast because we've come to your tap room, but it's been
Absolutely, and you'll be very welcome.
So obviously you two running the business, what about partners? Are they getting involved? Are they helping in any way?
Yeah, their jobs are very different to what we do. I think they like the break of it. So my wife's her mortgage advisor. She loves doing it, but she luckily loves coming to serve pints and sort of do markets and meeting people. She's very sort of sociable, and she puts. I don't use LinkedIn, but she puts it all on LinkedIn, and she goes off to London and does all these events, and everyone just comes straight up to her and says, "How's the beer going? I saw you at this market. Are you brewing this and that?" And yeah, luckily she loves it. And Adam would say that his wife does think also very much
my
different.
wife's exactly the same. Different career, but she's always mucking in doing doing something, helping out when she can. We drag them off to different festivals and events, don't we? Either serving at them or going along just because it's places to meet the brewers' socials and stuff, which is always really good fun. But yeah, it's worth saying that my wife, Jin, Ken's wife, Sarah, and there's a pool of friends around us as well that come and help us at bars, and it has become more than just the two of us, isn't it?
Definitely. There's a community, like you say, of a community being the pub, the community of people that help. I mean, whatever job you're going to have and people go, I'll come and help for free.
It's so strange how beer works that way, isn't it? And I think when you're getting help like that from outside, you know that you're doing something right because they want to come and help you.
Yeah, 100%. I guess also, it's come from some unusual quarters as well, isn't it? We've had people sort of offering up time to do all sorts of things, from marketing to back end of the website side of things, events management. I'm always surprised when, somebody comes along and goes, I'll give you a hand doing that. And it's great because it just takes that little bit of pressure off. Everyone really enjoys being part of it, and wants to be part of it. That for me is incredible. It's one of the reasons why I love doing what we're doing. It goes back to being community, doesn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah. You mentioned the website there. That's a seamless link into where people can get hold of your beers.
Oh, absolutely, yes. mysteriousbrewing.com. And we've got a great little lineup of beers on at the moment, obviously for our second birthday. I suppose the one beer we haven't spoken about today is, see if you can guess what the name of the beer would be. We always do a limited edition bottled beer. So last year we had one. This year we have a bottled Imperial Stout called, anyone guess?
Well, I'm going to guess next year it'll be called 3, which means this year it's called 2.
Very limited run on that. So that is available as of our birthday. So 3rd of May. So depending where we are, there'll be some left or there might not be.
Brilliant. Look, well, we wish you every success for the next 2 years and beyond that as well. It'll be interesting to catch up when you're 4 years old and see where you are then.
Yeah, I'll have a listen to this before the episode.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having us again, and thanks for everyone for listening.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks so much. Cheers. Tried and tested time now on Daftaboutcraft. What have we been enjoying drinking since the last episode, Dave? Have you had much recently?
I have definitely had a lot of beer. I'm back to, I would say, more or less full health.
I feel as I want to press the applause button at this point.
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I've had a lot of beer. I managed to go to a couple of little festival bits here and there. There was one over the Easter weekend, which I went to at Three Wise Monkeys in Ipswich. I would just say, on a bit of a tangent, I think if they're going to do that again next year, they really need to plug it better and also perhaps pick a different weekend, because it fell the same weekend as Briarbanks, a far more established festival. And you can guess what happened. Briarbanks was thriving. From reports, it did really well, whereas the Monkeys one was very quiet on Good Friday. And the main difference being they'd actually got the breweries to come along. So you'd got Artifact, Ampersand, Leon C had all turned up with the beers on the machines rather than just sending some kegs. And I felt a bit for them because it was a bit of a ghost town. Good idea, but perhaps just needed a little bit of looking at the execution. So I had an Ampersand dipper on tap called Brute Force. That was very good. And then following weekend, went to a pub called the Paken and Fox, which is out Ixworth Way, for those who know Suffolk, which is quite near Artifact, and they were there last year when it was freezing cold, and it was much better weather this time, so they were there again. But there were beers from the Colonel there as well. Sadly, no one from the Colonel, otherwise I would have been hanging off them trying to get them to come on the podcast. Again, that was nice, but beer I enjoyed the most wasn't at either of those. That's not to say I didn't have nice beers, but it's actually from a very recent brew to me, from Blunt Rock, because when Blunt Rock sent beer to me, they sent me a nice mix of stuff. And I tried Sleeping Naked, which is a 6.8% New Zealand IPA. I've still got a couple of Blunt Rocks to go, but this is by far my favourite. It was very mango-y, like real old school fruity mango nose and initial taste. And then the more I drank it, the sort of danker and a bit more resiny it got, but the fruits sort of kept hanging around in the background. So it was just a really, really nice beer. My favourite.
See, all I've got in my mind there is you said the words, I tried Sleeping Naked, and that was just going round my mind again and again what you were talking there.
Well, it is the weather, so...
Yeah, what did I enjoy? Well, this was a beer I had in the sunshine. This was an 8.4% beer that we have actually had before. on the podcast, and it's from Durham Brewery. Sumerian, their dates.
Yeah. I've still got a bottle in the fridge.
Well, I remember at the time, we spoke to Ellie last year for their 30th birthday, and it was really good. And that bottle's been sitting there, and I thought, I'm going to open this. Opened it, and it was even better than I remember. God, it's just so lovely and sweet and wholesome. It's amazing.
I remember it actually knocked me on my behind a bit because I was drinking it at a decent pace because it was so drinkable during the interview. And I do remember sort of getting towards the interview thinking, cool, actually, I'm beginning to feel this.
Yeah.
You saying that just makes me want to go, because I've still got some of those Durham ones. Eddie sent us some of the proper strong ones, and they've just been sat in the fridge where I sort of need to think of an occasion or a reason to go. And that, yeah, you talking about Sumerian again now makes me want to go have it again.
Well, I shared it 3 ways for that very reason that you just said there. It can knock you sideways a little bit, but what a wonderful beer. And it just reminded me that breweries like that have been around for decades and decades are making the most fantastic beers. They don't have to be brand new breweries, but there's some amazing, well-established names out there making great beers like that.
And now it's time for Hype or Tripe.
Well, you've heard the music, and when you hear that music, you know it's hype or tripe time. This is where we get usually a big beer or a beer with a difference, and we discuss it and we judge whether it's hype or tripe. It's only our opinions. Nobody's right or wrong here. This is a series of beers, one of which Dave has just spilt all over his kitchen table by the looks of it. This is a series of beers, custard beers from Turning Point. Now, Dave, is this a third time they've done these? I reckon it is. Could even be fourth.
It's certainly third at least, I think. I think the first comment I'd like to make is you cannot accuse Turning Point of not giving you your money's worth. That can was full to the brim, and I do mean to the brim. I opened it and it didn't go everywhere because it was pressurised. It just went everywhere because there was so much liquid in there.
Well, look, Turning Point have always been very generous with us over the years. They've been generous with their time and with their beer. And, well, they're still very generous with their beer in their cans, aren't they? That's good to see. The last time we did this, I think it was it last year or the year before, Dave?
I think it was 2023 we did it. We didn't do it last year.
That's right. I think this is the fourth time they've released these beers, and we missed one of them, which was last year. So we last did them 2 years ago. Cameron from Turning Point kindly came on and talked us through them. But I actually went to Turning Point's pub in York just a couple of weeks ago, to the Falcon, which I've always wanted to go to, and we found ourselves in York for Brew York's 9th birthday celebrations, and I thought, we're going to do it. Let's go to the Falcon. Walked in there, and it was the day the custard beers were released, and they had on the bar a cask of the stout. It was the start of the day. It's an 11% beer. I mean, that is completely backwards. We never do that, do we? We end with those sort of beers.
We do. Now, the question I have at this point is, I agree with you. I would want to try that beer in that situation. Was a third available?
I only had a third. I didn't gorge myself on a half or anything. Okay, let's put this into context. So we went to York. We were staying opposite a pub. We thought we'll just pop into the pub, had a quick pint. Then we decided that the station tap at the railway station in York wasn't very far away, so we went into there. I had a couple of halves in there. Then we found the Falcon, and I saw these custard beers. So I had to have the standard custard, and I saw this cask of the Caribbean one, and I thought, I'm going to have this. I was with my brother, who's not a big drinker, but he will drink them. He loved the custard one, and he said it tastes just like custard. But I couldn't persuade him to share the stout with me, which is why some hours later I was sitting with my head in my lap, and he was fine. Anyway, Dave, we digress. How is that beer?
Well, I would just like to say, before we get to that beer, you mentioned the vanilla custard. Now, I was in the lucky position, actually, because these beers got released. Now, they didn't come out on cask or keg near me. However, Hopsters was, I think, it was certainly the closest place to me, and possibly one of the, if not the only one in the East that got the cans on release day. So a lovely coup for Hopsters, and I made sure to go down this week. And I was a little bit disappointed, honestly, but they had some in the fridge, and they also had some others anyway, so they hadn't sold out, which I was a bit disappointed with. Like, obviously I wanted them, but I was kind of hoping people would have really gone for it.
Just on a slight tangent, I wonder if the idea of here's some beers that are like custard. If you don't like custard, are you going to avoid these beers?
Potentially. It depends, I think, in your mind's eye, almost what you think that is. Do you think, God, if that's going to be all thick and it could be almost gloopy, lumpy custard, that sounds horrible.
Would you remember, like, school dinners? They used to do chocolate custard, didn't they?
Yeah.
In fact, I think one of the beers they did in the last few years was the pink custard, wasn't it?
Yes.
Pink custard matter.
Which was raspberry flavour, I believe.
Which was amazing. But if you've got a custard thing, and some people hate the texture of custard,
Yep.
I can see why people would avoid them, but I would say even if you've got a custard phobia, don't avoid these beers. They're great.
Absolutely. Yeah, as I say, I've got all 3 cans. I've already had vanilla, which is 6% and is ludicrously one of the most easy drinking 6% beers you'll ever have.
It's such a clever beer because it's the colour of custard. Okay, it's not the thickness of custard, but we don't want it to be. But it's the colour of custard, and it has this lovely sweetness to it without being overbearing.
Yeah, it's really good sorcery, isn't it? Because when you first drink it, it's fizzy like beer, and then it goes vanilla sweet, but it doesn't ever go really sickly sweet thick. So you're like, oh god, this is going to be an effort. In fact, I found it was completely the opposite. I sort of nailed my can very, very quickly.
Yeah,
that is consistent with how that beer is produced year after year, which again is, testament.
Yeah, so the vanilla is a hit. I'm just watching you now, Dave. You're drinking that down as though it's a 4% porter.
Worrying, isn't it? I can see why you got in a bit of a muddle with this. It is so smooth, not so sweet as in so sickly sweet. Again, it is like that chocolate custard which you described from school dinners. There is that element to it, but it's deeper than that. It's not deep enough to be barrel aged deep or anything like that. No. It's best way I could say this is if you have had over the years. Do you remember Noah when we got really excited about Noah? And beers like that sort of malty sweet chocolate, but
before it went into Morrison's and then ended up getting discounted every few weeks.
Yeah. So that's the original ones of that when it was incredible, and it was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know beers could be made like this, where they're strong, they're sweet, and it's like drinking a dessert. This is like drinking a dessert before it got all a bit out of control and went really silly sweet.
I don't know how much of the Siren influence is there in that beer, because this is based on their Christmas releases they do every year, which I actually love. I always buy them every year. I think I've still got last year's sitting downstairs waiting to be drunk. But this was, actually, when we were in the Falcon, I asked where it was brewed, and he said, well, it's got the Turning Point branding, so you can guess where it was brewed. I can't be 100% what influence Siren had over it.
You'd be the better person to answer this, because I actually probably try and do it this year, get those Caribbean beers. They pass me by a little bit each time. Not because I don't like them, I just don't get round to buying them, but I just was reading a bit on the can, and it says fusing Ambirana wood spirals, a special liquid cacao blend, which I definitely get, and a handful of spices. Now,
right.
I'd say there's a little bit of spice in there. Would the Caribbean ones have more spice in than this, do you think?
I think so. I think what we've got here is an element of those Siren beers, using some of the spices, but not so amped up, but more toned down, I think.
This is superb again. Oh, it's so good.
They seem to smash these out of the park every time. So did you buy the other one as well, the rhubarb?
Yes, I've got the rhubarb.
I had a sip of the rhubarb one. So after we left the Falcon, we went to Valhalla in York, and some of the people we were with, one of them had got the rhubarb beer, so I just had a little sip. You can't really gauge a beer just on a sip, but it went down very nicely. It was quite a big sip.
I had nothing but high hopes for that beer. I imagine it will be great. This is really, really, really good. And it's also worth saying it is a hobby horse of both of ours. They have done this beer in a 330 can, and that is spot on, because this is going to go down far too quick. I'm going to have the same problem as you did, I suspect, but I can't help myself.
Well, at least you're at home and you can get a bed and sleep it off.
You would have that. And how on earth are you going to just let that sit there for half an hour while you take delicate sips out of it? You just want to murder it because it's so drinkable. No, I don't know that there's much more both of us can say about these. They are so good. You should go get them.
I think what is lovely is, not long ago, Chubbles was released again from Cloudwater, their annual release of Chubbles.
To no fanfare. In fact, you can still see Cloudwater's 10th birthday beers on the shelves in places if you look carefully. Potty was released in January, the annual release from Verdant. People went a little bit mad about it. But the thing with those beers is that when they're released, they're exactly the same
same every year. Nothing changes. These beers from Turning Point, although they may be the custard beers every 12 months, they're different beers.
They keep thinking of ways to make it just different enough that it's... But what doesn't get lost is how good the original idea was. That still is there.
I say they're different beers. The original one is the same, but the other ones in the series always vary.
Yeah, they have a play about with them, and that's brilliant. But what they do is they don't have a play about for the sake of just doing something daft, and then it's like, well, that was a waste of time. They make it actually still really, really, really good beers.
In the way that we often think some breweries are taking the mick out of customers, and churning these releases out year on year, Turning Point aren't doing that. They're putting their usual love and care is going into these beers.
They do churn out a lot of beers now, Turning Point, because they have got bigger, but I don't necessarily think of them as big because I still don't get any Turning Point beer down this way.
I'm sure there's plenty of people listening to this that have never had a Turning Point beers, and goodness, if you haven't, they've got their standards like the Nova Pilsner and Disco King. Try those if you want, but if you want to go for something a little bit different, I'd go for these. By the way, I should just say, because I'm not drinking these beers because I've already had them, I am going back to my Brew to Me because the guys there were so kind, they sent over about 12 cans, and I'm currently drinking the American Pale Ale, 5.6% Muppetry, which is very apt because I was a bit of a Muppet in York. Drinking that 11% beer so early in the day. Well, this has gone down very well. Very nice. Got to say, American Pale Ales don't always draw me in. I always think they're going to be a little bit piney, but this has gone down very well. That's what we've been talking. I've drunk that can, it's gone.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We're off on a tangent again. American Pale is never a style I necessarily pick up because I'm the same as you. I think I kind of know how I think this is going to taste, and it's probably not what I'm necessarily after. But then I'll have it and think, oh, you know what, that was okay. We digress.
We're so prejudiced against it. But one thing is for sure, Dave's beer hasn't hung around. That's nearly gone. Hype or tripe? That is the question.
Easiest one I think we've had of this for a long time. Hype.
100% all aboard the hype train for Turning Point's custard beers.
Daftaboutcraft, powered by Craft Brew Festival, nationwide beer festivals with a difference. Daftaboutcraft, brought to you with mosaic board print, makers of supreme beer mats. Daftaboutcraft.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.